What hyperbaric oxygen does is a couple of things, but one is it saturates the plasma with more oxygen. And also it saturates not just through the normal, circulatory measures, it saturates your tissue beds with
Mm.
more oxygen. So you're getting more oxygen kind of from two different pathways. Your mitochondria must have oxygen to run oxidative phosphorylation to make ATP.
What do you look for as sort of keystone symptoms that perk you up to say, there might be a mitochondrial issue present?
Yeah, I think, and because everything is connected, and it's never just one thing that's wrong. You also have to consider what else might be going on. But one of the things is taking a kind of a step back and a macro look at, did this person have a real long kind of slow slide into ill health, and their symptoms have been stacking up over time, and they're you know 3 years ago or 5 years ago, they were 80% better than they are now. That's often a tell that regardless of what got them where they are now, the long, slow slide has taken a toll on the mitochondria, both in the obvious organs. So let's say they're presenting with digestive problems or brain, but also in probably the rest of their body as well.
Sure.
So that's one huge tell, is the overall picture of how did this go on. Now there's a subtype, which is a more rapid insult. So a person, you know, seemingly was healthy, they didn't have these symptoms before, and they get some very noticeable insult. We see this with long
Mm.
COVID patients, for
Right.
example, or other people. And it's really an exposure. And in the case of virus, it's an exposure to an immune disruption. In the case of other things, that could be a toxic exposure, like we see this with mold patients, for example.
Sure.
So if they sort of go along, they seem okay, and they kind of fall off the cliff health wise, that's another one where you throw enough disruption into a healthy body and it will just stop operating normally. So those
Sure.
two patterns, I think, are really important. Then there's just the more symptomatic things, which are those global constitutional things like fatigue, brain fog, or aggravation of other neurological types of symptoms, even muscle pain, muscle aches. And what we see a lot is an inability for exercise to be regenerative,
Mm.
because they're working out and they can't recover like they used to, say, 10 years prior. That's a mitochondrial deficit as well.
And by the way, if this has been helpful, please comment and subscribe. This really does help us reach more people who are trying to improve their health. So it is quite deeply appreciated. One parallel, maybe for our audience who I know are very astute with gut health, a healthy gut should be able to process fiber, prebiotics,
Right.
but an unhealthy gut
Yeah.
can't make that shift. So if we have a healthy organ, let's say, or organelle, then you should be able to be metabolically, or let's say substrate flexible, high fiber, low
Mhm.
fiber, high carb, low carb. And if you're not, I wouldn't say force your way through it, but use that as a signal, as a clue that, okay, there's something upstream that's altering GI function or mitochondrial function or what have you.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And you can see why, if that's going on and you're not really thinking about it and you're the patient, it could be months or even years where you've slowly shifted your diet just for expediency,
Sure.
to get the nutrients in as quick as possible. And you're not, as you say, you lose that ability to deal with, whatever the substrate is.
Right.
So, yeah, I see that a lot. And the upside is you can undo it. The downside is you have to stop the ship from going down that pathway.
With food, are you trying to go moderate to lower carb and sort of trying to be cognizant of not pushing someone farther or lower than their mitochondria can go outside of the really important basic piece of clean air, clean food, clean water, right? No toxins. So that's a given. But from there, where do you go next?
Yeah, the way that, and again, some people can kind of do all this at once, and some people it's really baby steps.
Sure.
So we have a patient education aid that's basically a pyramid. The bottom layer actually is working up to a 12 to 13-hour intermittent fast every day. Now, we can't always start there, but the reason it's at the bottom is because of the ability to help the cells take the trash out in autophagy and do a number of other things. The next step actually doesn't even get to macros, it's cleaning up. So taking out any obvious preservatives and dyes and the junk that comes with our food.
Sure.
And then the next is getting rid of any source of simple carbohydrate, too fast burning, starches, et cetera, and making the carbohydrates more complex vegetable, material, which is going to help on a number of levels. And then the next steps above that, we kind of personalize, but they're generally a lower carbohydrate type of a diet. Some people, it's intermittent fasting and even keto pending. But the idea being, once they tolerate that, then you're allowing the cells to actually take the trash out easier, which helps to decrease the cell danger response. You're getting sort of high concentration nutrition through, say, a lower carbohydrate diet, and you're retraining the mitochondria that they can actually do this. They can burn the fats and
Sure.
have high energy needs met. So yeah, it sort of goes in that order, and most of the time that works for folks. The basics, at the very least, carnitine is usually a primary treatment for me because it's what helps get the fatty acids into the mitochondria to burn them,
Sure.
the amino acid carnitine. And a lot of people, like you hear about the keto flu and stuff like that, a lot of times those symptoms come because we're trying to burn more fats for energy and we ran out of enough carnitine. It's sometimes that simple. So carnitine's a really core thing to help feed the machine, so to speak. If you look at the way the human cell protects itself with antioxidants, you definitely need more of those, especially in cell danger response, because you're getting stuck and creating more inflammatory chemistry. The cell starts with just three things. There's glutathione, vitamin C, and then vitamin E.
Hmm.
And vitamin E kind of hangs out in the fatty membranes, but vitamin C and glutathione help cycle each other in the mitochondria and the cytosol, et cetera. So if those are not, sufficient, um, you got to fix those, and then all the other, kind of higher level antioxidants will work better. Then, once we kind of take care of the redox inflammatory thing and get enough carnitine to get the energy in, your mitochondria basically run on B vitamin, minerals, and a couple of other nutrient substances. So then you have to look at, well, how much of that am I getting? Uh, Obviously, if I'm still sick and tired, et cetera, I need more. And which ones might be kind of high value. So one that, and here's the other thing, a lot of these things help the mitochondria, but help everywhere else, right?
Sure.
So, for example, coenzyme Q10 is actually used in the mitochondrial complexes in a couple places, and it helps other stuff in your body. So it's sort of like that's a easy one to add in.
Sure.
For some people, alpha lipoic acid is also helpful. It's sort of a collateral helper, but it also does a number of other good things too. But then when you get to looking at, okay, NAD support, that's really big because there's lots of YouTube videos on it and stuff. Um, NAD, NAD's family, it cycles around. That's actually where you first get the energy units to run the mitochondrial complexes. So if we are low in NAD, the mitochondria slow down. And NAD is made from a form of vitamin B3 with some other steps, and it's the active form that does that. So because of the other cofactors needed, the first thing you want to make sure is a person has enough of all the B vitamins so that that'll work. And then a lot of times, and people now will often come in saying they've tried this or that or the other thing. There's oral precursors that help with NAD, so nicotinamide riboside or nicotinamide mononucleotide, things like that. Those are often helpful, not that you need them forever, but if again our energy is running at 20-25%, if we put more substrate in to run the system, and we've got all the other things, uh, we're going to get more energy out of the system.
Sure.
So NAD support's kind of a core, really. Um, Another one that people will use, which again is not part of your body, it's an accessory, but it can sort of jumpstart things, would be methylene blue. It literally comes in kind of on this. So NAD starts at the beginning and just primes the system naturally. Methylene blue comes in on the side and sort of speeds the process up. So it's literally like an adjunct that you don't need that forever. Really fatigued people, sometimes it'll help. You do have to be careful because there's like methylene blue can carry a lot of toxins. So you really need a supplement that's
Well
been
sourced.
checked and
Yeah.
hyped,
Yep.
all that. Yeah.
Vitamin B1 was actually the first vitamin ever discovered. It functions to allow the mitochondria, partially via the Krebs cycle, to make energy, so cellular energy production. Let's come to the protocol. And again, I want to credit and thank Elliot Overton for putting a lot of this together. I'm just sharing it with you. Again, a lot of this has been taken from him. There are 3 general forms of thiamine. Thiamine HCl, that's going to have the lowest bioavailability. Benfotiamine, which will have high bioavailability, and TTFD, which also has high bioavailability. Now, with thiamine HCl, the dose that can be used is anywhere from 100 to 2,000 milligrams per day. With the benfotiamine, anywhere between 150 and 1,200 milligrams per day. And with the TTFD, because it's so bioavailable, 50 to 500 milligrams per day. And the general approach is to use a combination of these, but these are the target ranges for each individual. And really the one thing to be the most aware of is with the TTFD form, you shouldn't go much above 500 milligrams per day. And that leads to the phasing protocol, if you will, because we do want to sort of work our way onto thiamine gradually. Week 1, your total dose across these 3 different forms of thiamine, of B1, would be 400 milligrams per day. Then, week 2 to 3, you can escalate to anywhere between 600 and 1,200 milligrams per day. And then the final leg here, weeks 4 to 8, 1,600 to 2,000 milligrams per day. I also wanted to cover some food sources. Pork loin is a great source of thiamine. Other good sources: black beans, fortified breads and rices, Atlantic salmon, pecans, brown rice, not white rice, lentils, whole wheat bread, long grain rice, milk or plain yogurt, and liver and organ meats. I would also recommend the wonderful book, Nutrivore, where she has wonderful resources for how to obtain the most nutrient density from your diet, including but not limited to thiamine. Red light helps to improve energy production. 90 to 95% of our energy comes from the mitochondria. Within the mitochondria, there's a very important energy production center known as the electron transport chain. Now, when this apparatus is functioning correctly, you have this very elegant shunting of electrons down this membrane across from what's known as complex 1 through complex 4. Now, as the electrons are pushed down this membrane, protons are pushed to the outside of this membrane, creating a proton gradient akin to a dam of water that will then shunt the water through a turbine, spinning the turbine, and thus producing either electricity or, as in the mitochondria, spinning a turbine called ATP synthase and thus making ATP or energy. Why this is so relevant, again, is because if the cell, and these cells might make hair tissue, skin tissue, brain tissue, if they can't produce enough energy, they start to exhibit signs of aging. So smaller hair or lack thereof, less collagen in the skin, impaired neurotransmission, so reduced memory or executive function. And again, this is where red light holds promise. Now, part of the reason why this is so salient is because that electron transport chain is amenable to damage. Drinking alcohol, stress, poor sleep, ultra-processed food, lack of nutrition in the diet, infection, inflammation, all of these things create this sort of self-perpetuating aging cycle within our cells. And aging doesn't just mean superficial looks, let's say. It also includes things like joint and muscle recovery and cognition and even perhaps autoimmunity. If you're looking to cover a large area of the skin, hit multiple joints, improve exercise, fibromyalgia, or chronic fatigue, I think a panel device is your best bet. Now, with all these devices, it's not to say that what I'm recommending are the only good devices on the market. But I can say we've checked the specs were transparent, and they fall in alignment with those used in the majority of the research studies. So the panel device that I like is the Platinum LED. One of the things I like about this device is they have different size panels, firstly, but also they're modular, meaning you can start with a small panel, and then you can connect a small panel to a larger panel. And what I did essentially was I bought one large panel, then two, and now I have four where I can do a total body application on one side and I sort of flip over and do the other side. And again, what's nice about that is you're not launching right into buying the whole setup. You can feel it out. And also, if budget is a concern, you can progressively purchase your way up to a total body application. If you're looking to just have an impact on facial wrinkles, you can use a mask. There's several out there. One that we like is the Bond Charge. For hair growth, Copilus has a nice line of laser caps. Hair Max has a nice laser band. And the Cadillac would be Dr. Alan Bauman's Turbo Laser Cap. For joint pain, local application here, you can use a Nova pad, not Novo Thor, but Nova, N-O-V-A, or the Kineon Move. For cognition and mood, there are a number of transcranial red light devices out there. However, there's some questions I have about the other devices than the V-Light. The V-Light, I feel, to have the most transparency and the most verifiable specs regarding that its output is actually as stated. Meaning, as one maybe more relatable example, when supplements are subjected to third-party independent testing, you often see what's on the label is not actually in the product. That same thing can apply for these devices. A laser manufacturer or a light manufacturer could put whatever they want on the label, but that may not actually be the output that you get when it's tested to see if it actually delivers. So the V-Light for transcranial is the one I would recommend. For thyroid, Nova also has a wand device called the Extra Strength Healing Laser. If you're going to experiment for gut health, I think one of the smaller Biomax panels applied about 6 inches away from your stomach. And then for sleep, you want that total or most of your body panel application. That would be the Biomax, or transcranially would be the V-Light transcranial helmet. And just as a brief aside, you will see with these various devices wavelengths listed. The wavelengths usually range from 480 up to 1060. And it's not to say that a given wavelength is the best. They all seem to work. They just have different applications. The longer the wavelength, the more linearly the energy of the beam is going to be dispersed. So it'll get deeper into tissue. Now, the lower or the shorter the wavelength, the more horizontally the energy is distributed, the more superficial the impact is going to have. So as a general rule, the deeper the penetration you're looking to have, muscle, joints, nerve, and brain, the higher or the longer the wavelength, and the more superficial, so hair, skin, blood vessels, the shorter the wavelength. And in terms of usage guides, I would defer to the manufacturer's recommendations because this is going to give you the most proximal guidelines to follow. But there are a few broad strokes, 3 to 5 times per week, 10 to 20 minutes per session. There is a potential for overuse. So I do want to caution, let's say you decide to get a total body panel plus a mask plus a pad. You could very easily wonder your way into over-treatment. Most therapies have a inverted U dose response curve, meaning no dose, no benefit, too high of a dose, detriment. The ideal dose is somewhere in the middle. So just bear in mind, there's not a linear improvement scale with progressively higher levels of red light therapy. So don't overdo it, essentially.
What hyperbaric oxygen does is a couple of things, but one is it saturates the plasma with more oxygen, and also it saturates not just through the normal, circulatory measures, it saturates your tissue beds with more oxygen. So you're getting more oxygen kind of from two different pathways. Your mitochondria must have oxygen to run oxidative phosphorylation to make ATP.
Right.
If you then increase the availability of oxygen, at the side of the cell, oxygen naturally goes down in a gradient. So normally it's a pretty big gradient just from breathing. If we supersaturate your body, the gradient gets bigger and the mitochondria are going to process more oxygen, make more ATP, et cetera. So that's a very important process. It also helps one way to think of it is kind of triggers your oxidative reductive cycles. So these are the cycles that you oxidize or you get inflamed, and then the antioxidants are triggered to go up and take care of the inflammation. So hyperbaric also is triggering those processes, which again are helping to decrease your inflammation.
Most of the chambers that you'll see at wellness clinics or at home, they're soft walled and they go up to about 1.3 atmospheres or 1.5. And then when you go to a clinic like yours, oftentimes they go up to about 2.4, 2.5 atmospheres, maybe sometimes 3. And there's a little bit of debate regarding, what are the better levels of pressure.
So the C crest doesn't go any higher than 2.5 that I know of. So really, in order to get up to 3, you have to go to the hospital. So hyperbaric in the hospital where they've got chambers that go all the way to 8 atmospheres. And that's also what they have in the dive centers by the coast where people are doing a lot of diving. And above 3 atmospheres, we lose efficacy for the brain, because at that point we're actually causing vasoconstriction in the brain that's so intense that people can have seizures or they can pass out. So we're not benefiting brain tissue when we're super high. Ideally, I think we would do 40 hours with 2 weeks off, 40 hours with 2 weeks off, 40 hours with 2 weeks off until you felt normal or even superhuman.
Essentially, VO2 max, you're right. It's at the high end. It's at the full end. Really what it's measuring is how much oxygen can your body use. That's VO2 max, right? How much oxygen can your body use? And that's a function of mitochondrial health. But ultimately, it's also a surrogate marker or another marker for how much blood can your heart pump, right? Because in order to get oxygen to the mitochondria, the heart's got to be pumping it, right? So we look at it as how much blood can your heart pump? That's VO2 max. And the more blood your heart can pump per minute, the stronger you are, the healthier you are, the longer you live, the better everything is. What we find is that many trainers are misleading people that they're getting cardio while they're doing resistance training. It's just not really happening to the extent they're getting some. It's much better than sitting on the couch, but they're not building VO2 the way that they could if they actually just focus on the cardio piece. So that's what we
agree.
want.
No, yeah. I mean, great points there. So to hit and respond to a few of those, totally agree that there are some that say all you need is weight training.
Yeah.
And I would agree that weight training arguably is foundational, meaning if you can only do one, maybe you'd want to only do weight training for the muscle mass and for some of the cardio, but I think that's debatable, right? So the point I'm trying to make is the people who tell you all you've got to do is weight training and don't do cardio because it's going to kill your body composition. As an athlete, as a former college athlete and someone who's gone all over the spectrum, I have not felt my best when I was only doing weights, even if it was weights as HIIT training, where I'm walking out of the gym dripping in sweat and feeling like I had a vision because I work so hard. There's something different that you get when you're going for a 3 or a 5 mile run or a 10 or a 15 mile ride.
Right.
As one component. And then along with that, when you're doing those trying to hit your VO2 max efforts where you feel like you're going to cough up a lung because you're pushing so hard for 1, 2, or 3 minutes. It's just a different adaptation.
It's a different adaptation. I agree. And, I really wish that, that you could do zone 2 and build VO2 out the wazoo. I mean, I wish that was the case because we'd have more people with great VO2s. And there are so many people that actually, I find people fall into 2 camps. They really prefer cardio or they really prefer resistance training. And that's kind of their bias, right? And it's so important for the people that love cardio to do resistance training. And it's so important for the resistance training loving people to do cardio because you really want both. And when you think about it, all of this training we talked earlier about comes down to training the nervous system. So you want to train your nervous system. You think, movement is training your nervous system. Well, it is. So the weights are doing that, but so is running, so is biking, right? Navigating yourself around trees and all that. Your nervous system is dialed in, man. And you are building your whole parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system tone to handle those stresses in a way that you're just not getting or able to get, quite honestly, with weight training. And just like with that, you're getting stronger neural connections and stronger joints and everything else. I do both because I know that I'm a much better mountain biker when I'm doing resistance training, and I'm a much better resistance trainer when I'm doing mountain biking. I think if you can move in as many ways as possible, I've become very enamored, and I haven't really started doing it yet, but I'm very enamored with the concept of functional fitness, where these guys are down on the floor and they're moving around and they're doing all these body weight exercises and stretches and, positions. And those people, man, when you look at those people, they are ripped, and they also have incredible flexibility, right? You talk about their hips and everything else. One of the downsides of weight training or running for that matter is that you kind of over exercise and people get stiff and limited in terms of how much flexibility they have, right? So
I'll raise my hand on that one.
Well, there you go, right? And so what we really want is we want flexibility with strength. And so I think some of the functional training stuff is really quite phenomenal for that.
The secret of getting things done is to act. So keep experimenting with your health. Don't give up. Keep trying. Keep making changes. And before you know it, you'll be feeling much better. Alrighty, this is Dr. Ruscio. Talk to you next time.